Hi guys, basically what I've been doing today is I've created a presentation which hopefully covers all of section A for the media exam next week. There's two questions to section A. The first just wants you to describe and evaluate the development of skills that you've acquired since AS to A2, and then the second question will ask you to identify one production and evaluate it in relation to one concept. Those concepts are digital technology, creativity, research and planning, post-production, and using conventions from real media texts. Okay, what the examiners want you to do is to show off about the knowledge you have picked up over the progression from AS to A2. You can lie as long as the information you provide is relevant, and well, most areas of analysis actually interlock with each other, but I've got a few examples of what you could write, and you still have to show the skills that you acquired in AS because they want to still recognise that your first year was valuable and a good platform to build on for A2. So digital technology, how did you use your use of digital technology improve from AS to A2? Here are just a couple of examples that you could mention. The use of Blogger. In AS we used images to help illustrate our essays on the blog. In A2 we annotated images and embedded videos and sounds onto our blogs. You could say that in AS you used Incompetech to collect copyright-free music, whereas in A2 you used GarageBand to create your own, and that shows the progression of individual creativity. And you'd have to talk about Adobe Premiere Pro for this question. What filters and effects enhanced your work in A2 that maybe you didn't know about in AS? Motion scaling, fast color corrector, transitional effects such as dissolve and crossfade-ins. So much more you can say for that question as well. Creativity, here we go then. How did you use creativity? How did it expand from AS to A2? Well, we all used the director's commentary to show off about our knowledge of technology. Last year it was created textually on a blog. This year we used green screen, and I was having a look at the mark scheme, and they really want students to show that they've exploited technology to be creative and original, and we definitely was doing that this year. Was the choice of location more creative this time in your work? Were you more creative with your narrative as well? Did you use softwares like Adobe Photoshop and Fireworks to create print artifacts? In AS we're much more limited in the software we used. There's more consideration of the context of our media productions this year. And finally, was there more creativity in the range of shots? In AS we used shots like the medium close-up. In A2 we used the dolly to implement a forward tracking shot. That would be a good example of showing a progression of creativity. And again, there's lots more you can write for that question, and you could say stuff like how the design and look of your blog from AS to A2 changed, how you use creative visual ideas for your title sequences. Of course, we all use green screen. Your design and the creativity on Photoshop, the creativity in using editing techniques such as video filters and transitions, and the creativity in mind mapping and storyboarding and designing print artifacts. They're all some of the stuff that Mr. Judge puts on that A3 sheet of paper. Let's go on to the next one then. This is research and planning. How did you use the research and planning stages in AS compared to A2? You could bring in digital technology and say that in A2 you created questionnaires on SurveyMonkey, which is an online survey maker, whereas you created paper-based questionnaires in AS. And say why you did that. You probably didn't do that, but you could lie and say you did anyway, and maybe more time efficient. Maybe you could collect your results faster and create a graph to show them visually as well. Research into existing products. In AS we analysed thrillers, rom-coms and horrors to learn the codes and conventions. Say which films you did analyse and what you learnt, and then bring in how you researched into existing products in A2. For example, you might have researched music videos on MTV and learnt that you need the music channel logo, the artist name and the song all on the music video itself. You could again talk about the choice of location. You could say that last year we filmed at the Academy because it was easier to get to and time efficient, but in A2 we used a range of indoor and outdoor locations to add variety to our work. Post-production is the editing stages. You'd have to bring in Adobe Premiere Pro terminology to support your answer here. You could say that in AS you learn how to import images onto your work. In A2 maybe you used uniform scaling to make sure size and positioning was perfect. You could say that in AS we learned how to add sound, fading it in and out, whereas in A2 we considered sound synchronization much more carefully. The manipulation of the software therefore is increased, and you could also mention things like keying, alpha key and the spotlight effect. And talk about your ancillary texts as well, how you used Photoshop to edit the layout, font, colour for music covers or articles. Using conventions from real media texts, how did this inform your understanding? Well, again, this ties in with the research and planning because you would have thought about conventions at this stage. Just show a progression of your understanding from AS to A2 again. Say how you looked at different types of music video, narrative-based and performance-based, and how did this influence your decision? For AS, talk about how you researched into different genres, but maybe didn't consider the concepts as much. You could even bring in a theory here too, the semiotic theory with the sign, the signifier and the signified, and maybe even talk about feminism as well, which is the representation of genres in your production. This won't be a question on its own, but you're going to have to do some quality bullshitting for it if you do get it as part of another question. This is the outside college skills, the skills that you've acquired in media outside school time. Some examples of outside college skills include having your own YouTube music channel where you create and promote your own music videos. Maybe you create online podcasts which helped you with your presenting skills. You could say that you have a column in the school's monthly newsletter, The Voice, which helped you to get an understanding of the conventional form and structure of an article. And don't you also do lots of photography outside of school as well? You could say that you do, and say that you've improved your understanding of camera angles to get the best detail that you can from your shots. So question 1B. There are 5 different areas that need to be revised here: genre, representation, narrative, audiences and media language. You must relate the theory they ask for in the exam to one of your media productions and show an understanding of the theory, for example, historical context to it, have quotes from the theorists in the particular area as well, and how you can use the theory or not use the theory for your production. For genre, you'd look at the Christopher Metz 1974 theory of genre development. You've got the experimental stage where you've got the first ever traces of music video or documentary. An example of that would be the Beatles with A Hard Day's Night in 1964. Then you have the classic stage where codes and conventions are established to the genre and more people are choosing to explore it and recognize it. Michael Jackson's Thriller would be a good example of that, very iconic music video. Then you've got the parody stage where consumers add their own humorous stamp on the genre. Weird Al Yankovic would be a good use of the parody stage there for music videos. And then you've got the deconstruction stage where a lot more respect is shown to the codes and conventions but maybe a slight creative manipulation to them. Which stage would you categorize for your production, or would you not? This is basically where you provide your opinion. If I was doing it for a documentary, you probably wouldn't be able to look at the genre development in too much detail, but you have got the mockumentaries like The Office for the parody stage and the deconstruction for The Only Way is Essex, but I wouldn't know which category to fit my work into. Narrative, the Todorov theory of equilibrium. Again, I don't think I'd be able to put this for my documentary because it effectively shows the progression of a storyline, and the documentary I created doesn't have a storyline. But for music videos you could definitely use this. You've got 5 stages: a state of equilibrium, a disruption of that order, a recognition of disorder, attempt to repair the damage and return to restoration or a new equilibrium. If you don't think you can adopt the theory to one of your work, then just choose the other one you did, whether that be AS or A2. I'd choose the Thriller for this question. And you just have to consider the theory in detail, and well, maybe you could explore whether having a non-linear or linear narrative would determine whether you can use the theory. Can the theory be implemented for your production? And think about the reliability of the theory. Can it be used for all narratives? If so, why or why not? Quickly, still on that question about the narrative, last year we were only expected to create the opening sequence to a thriller, rom-com or horror, so you could say that the theory of equilibrium could be used if you're creating the whole film itself, but you're only creating the opening 5 minutes, so not all the stages of equilibrium would be used. Right, on to audience. You've got the models of audience behaviour, passive and active theories. Think about if your production was really being distributed to your target audience and how you would want them to respond. You've got the passive hypodermic needle effect, where the intended message is directly received and wholly accepted by the receiver. An example of this would be reading The Sun and reading everything as fact. Active models include the uses and gratification theory, where consumers are much more active in making their media consuming decisions. For example, you want to watch the music video because you like the band singing it, not because you've been told to. The reception theory is also part of the active model, where different interpretations by those who watch the music video are taken into account. For example, One Direction might attract the female population, but not the middle-aged adult demographic. Have you challenged or abided by the models of audience behaviour? For example, the choice of characters in your music video might hint that it is targeted towards a younger audience. And do you agree with the theory, and why can it be adopted for your production? The representation theory is Ferdinand de Saussure's theory of semiotics, the sign, the signifier and the signified. Have you used representation to challenge or agree with a stereotype? You can think about realism. Is the text expected to be realistic? Bias and objectivity. Do media text support particular views? Interpretations. Why do some audiences believe some representations are true and some don't? Really explore today's media for this question. Hopefully you can try to do it in your target area, but you don't have to, as long as you do talk about your production at some point. You could tie in the representation of Muslims in today's media after the Woolwich killing. That shows your understanding of the theory on a wider scale, and it's more up to date as well, which is what the examiner will want. And finally, make sure, again, you tie in with your production. Have you been biased in your work? Have you stereotyped? Is your text realistic? Finally, media language. Well, this would be a great question to get. Don't think we're going to get it, to be honest, because you can effectively talk about any of these areas if you get this topic, but you never know, you might get it. Think in terms of last year as well, the camera angles, editing, mise-en-scène and sound, and how you use these in your production. And think about denotation, connotation, explore dominant ideologies that can be adopted for your work, and just try and be varied in your choice of analysis. I hope I've helped you with this presentation. If I haven't, then sorry for wasting about 30 minutes of your time, but good luck for the exam next week, guys. I'm sure you'll all do great.